Not sure who's chairing or who wants to start.
I guess you're chairing to start until we get a chair.
Okay, well then, for lack of a chair, I will call the meeting of the Richmond and Hinesburg Police Government Committee to order. This is April 14th at 3 p.m. It's sort of our first meeting in, I think, over a year of this committee, and we've got some new members. So we'll do welcome and public comment to start. So maybe as part of the welcome, we just introduce ourselves as who we are. I'm Josh Arneson, the town manager in Richmond.
I'm Mike Lohner, select board member in Hinesburg.
David Sanders, select board member from Richmond.
Dennis Place, select board member of Hinesburg.
Matt Cohen with the Richmond Police.
And Duke.
I have Duke, yes.
And online, we have Bard
Bard Hill, Richmond Select Board.
and,
Todd, the Hinesburg town manager.
all right, thank you all. Is there any public comment? We have one member of the public.
I'm assuming we're gonna run the meeting the way we run our select board meetings, so that I'm just gonna listen and hopefully be able to comment if something comes up.
I think that's a fair assumption. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? All right. Next is committee organization. So selection of a chair, a vice chair, and setting a regular meeting date and time. So we'll open it up for discussion of selecting a chair.
Anyone really interested in doing it?
Are you interested in doing it?
If nobody wants to, I will, but I'm not gonna be, oh, me.
Yes,
What
I
did you
can.
say? Me.
I guess I can try.
It probably makes sense to have the vice chair be from Richmond.
That was going to be my next suggestion.
All right, do we have a motion for Dennis as chair and David as vice chair?
So
Well,
Or anybody further discussion? Sorry.
Bard, are you interested in vice chairing this committee?
I'm good with the slate as presented.
Okay,
Then I guess I'll make a motion. You have. Sorry, I'm blanking names already. Dennis Place and David Sander. Dennis to be the chair and David to be the vice chair.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for David Sander Dennis Place to be chair and David Sander to be vice chair. All in favor, state your name and your vote.
Matt, I.
Dennis, I.
David, I.
Mike, aye.
Josh, aye.
Bard, aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then next is trying to set, well, I guess I'll turn it over to Dennis as the chair. Just complete the agenda item. I'm off the hook.
So what's a good time for? 3 o'clock's good for me, just because I work not far down the road. I get out at 2:30, but
Yeah,
I don't know how it is for everybody else. But I'm flexible.
I'm pretty flexible to all that other people.
I could make this work. Are we thinking, how often are we thinking of meeting?
I don't know, twice a month.
Okay, it would be a little tight the nights of water sewer select board, so if we wanted to do it alternate every other Mondays.
So second and fourth Mondays,
Yeah,
anybody?
Works.
I mean, I can make that work. It would probably have to be remotely for me. Tuesdays and Thursdays are better, but this is fine.
Is there another day, Todd, that you could be here?
For 3 o'clock, Tuesdays and Thursdays would be better, with I think Tuesday being the best out of all 5.
I could do Tuesdays at 5.
I can do Tuesdays.
You're shaking
Tuesdays
your
at
head.
5.
At 5 or?
No,
No.
at 3. I was saying out of the 5 days of the week, Tuesdays.
Oh,
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, I'm fine with Tuesdays.
okay.
3 o'clock.
Tuesdays at 3 don't really work for me. I'm looking ahead, and while my schedule is intermittent, I have a large number of occasional meetings on Tuesdays, 2 and 3 o'clock.
Thursday is also fine for me at 3, if that's better for everybody.
Fine with me.
Works for me.
The third Thursday of the month is out for me.
I have a
Yes.
standing meeting every Thursday from 2 to 4.
Well, let's
Hmm.
stick with Monday then. I'll
Days
figure
it
it out.
is.
So we'll say
Well,
second.
we're gonna go Tuesday. So Todd can be here.
I thought Bart couldn't make Tuesdays, but Todd can make Mondays remotely, so Monday might be preferred.
Okay,
Yep.
so Monday. 2nd and 4th.
Yeah. Second and fourth Mondays at 3 p.m. And do we want to meet here, alternate locations? You said you work close to here, so that might be better for you, but
I can be to either place by 3 o'clock.
Richmond's easy for me, but I don't mind traveling to Hinesburg if that's the will of everybody.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, I'm totally fine coming here.
Okay, we can start out that way, and then if we decide we want to change it up, we can.
Todd, would it be easier for you to make 3 o'clock meetings in Hinesburg?
Actually, no, because if I'm gonna have to be remote for some or most of them, it's easier to
Oh.
not have to set up for a meeting.
Yep,
Great.
makes sense. Okay, so second and fourth Mondays at 3 in Richmond, and we are at, oh, cool, we're at the second Monday right now in April, so we'd be the 28th. Excellent, we're already on schedule. Look at that.
Update calendar.
All right.
And I'm sorry, but my email didn't come to my iPad.
You need an agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, up next is discussion of short-term and long-term goals for the committee.
Short term, I think we're all in agreement that we should continue with this collaboration, correct?
Correct.
So long term, I think we should set some goals.
This is Bart. Perhaps we should be more explicit about what that means short term, because there's really arguably right now 2 components. There's sharing of a chief, and then there's the contracting or sharing of officer or police patrol and other services. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I should back up and ask, and you would probably want to weigh in on this most, Bart, if we should leave the interim contract in place as is, or if we wanted to tweak that first. You can sit here.
A name tag and everything.
Perfect.
Didn't we just execute that though, or we're about to?
I believe so.
Yeah. So maybe that's the question, is that like, is there anything we want to do short term to an agreement that's already in place or about to be in place?
I think we just re-upped the chief contract, but I think the general services contract is this spring or summer.
I think it's the end of this fiscal year, I think.
It might be, you're right, yeah.
That would make sense. So we stay the course, maybe then I don't know if that's short or medium term, that we kind of like we renegotiate another extension or contract for that in the next fiscal year. That seems like is that like a short or medium term goal that people agree with?
That sounds like a good, I would say, short-term goal, because we're coming up on the next fiscal year. So if anybody wanted to make changes to the contract before renewing it for the next fiscal year, now would be the time.
But I think we still need to have,
Go ahead.
is you, for the short term, we still need to know something, because we're gonna be hiring officers. You know, are we hiring them for Richmond, or are we hiring them for Hinesburg, or are we hiring them all for one town, or just? Right? I mean, we kind of need to know that.
Yeah.
And this is Todd here. I would say even kind of more immediate of that is, what do we at this point, Hinesburg is providing chief services to Richmond. And I think it would be good to get a chief search out soon. That person is going to want to know who they're working for and what the structure is. So these are all a bit kind of intertwined, if that makes sense.
It does.
We do kind of need to like be thinking about the short term and long term at the same time. There was discussion at the meeting previously of one department, if that's where the towns are going to go, whose employees are those? It's just kind of a lot of questions, but I really want to get the chief search going.
So this is Bart.
Go ahead, Bart.
I mean, I think that's probably in some ways because of our collective bargaining. That seems to me the easy one to say, next year, Richmond has budgeted a half-time chief, and our conversation has been to continue that. And I think at least when we polled our select board recently, it was unanimous. Let's keep going with a shared chief position. So that might be the easiest. And that seems open-ended to me, even though the contract is time limited.
Okay, and well, I guess so to that point, what I had been preparing is I know Richmond in the past has handled chief searches internally. I had been thinking of going in a different direction and looking for a recruiting firm to really manage that process. I don't know. I'm kind of halfway through updating an RFP to to get proposals from a firm to handle that process. I guess it would be good to know sort of, what Richmond thinks about that approach.
I think it's something worth exploring. I've been through, I think now 3 police chief searches that we've done internally. I think we had a decent process for all of them. There are some things I might change. But working with an outside firm could help us cast a wider net and attract some different candidates. So I'd be open to doing that.
Would that firm-
This is Bart. I'm open to it. I think for a decision, if we're looking for the select board to endorse it, it would be a proposal that we take to the select board, right? And do we have a sense of like a not to exceed figure, like what we'd be budgeting and presumably split it 50-50? If I understand that sort of approach.
Yeah, I don't have a number yet. I kind of hit pause. I can reach out and try to get some ideas, but yeah, I guess the general thought would be 50-50.
So this is a classic. If it's 2,000, it's easy. If it's 100,000, it's difficult.
No, I'm just gonna I would
Yeah.
total maybe somewhat educated guess is between 10 and 20,000 total. That's just sort of.
Yeah, that seems plausible to me.
I just think it's important that the reason I was thinking about hiring a firm to do it is just to really not to say we couldn't do it internally legitimately, but just to add another layer of sort of legitimacy and outside perspective. Yeah, and also just staff time for me. I don't really have the time to manage a process like that, quite honestly.
And I think one other thing, Todd, as you're talking about it, is hiring jointly, it sort of helps put a neutral party between the 2 towns. So it doesn't look like Hinesburg's leading the charge or Richmond's leading the charge. It's a neutral party to help us sort of evaluate candidates.
Yes. Yeah, and develop a process. Yeah.
Patty had a comment.
I'm just curious, Todd, so this firm is, this is what they do, is they are expert in police services hiring?
Ideally, yeah. So what I would be putting out is a request for proposals from firms to do the search. And part of the selection process would be what's their experience, what's their success rate been?
And how would the community be involved? I know the Richmond community seems to have a pretty, solid idea of what kind of a chief they would be looking for. But I think that there would need to be a community process to flesh out what does the community want? Would you not have a community committee at all?
I'm not saying that at all. Part of the proposal would be for the firms that are responding to kind of propose a potential scenario of the recruitment process. So it's undetermined at this point. I would imagine there'd be some public input, but it's really up to the firms that would be responding to propose a process.
So Todd, this is Bart. I think that makes sense. And it seems to me in the RFP, we could say they develop a process. Maybe this committee sort of, they propose something and then we review it, accept it or revise it and approve it. And maybe in the RFP say, including, whatever public participation we think is appropriate.
Yeah, I think I've got something in there like it. It's basically propose a process that we know will likely get revised once you meet with the towns and really understand their local concerns.
But I also think our police officers, I think they would have some good input on what kind of a chief they would like to have.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Todd, I wonder, for this, for the committee, we do have sort of a structure that we've used the last few years. I think it had a lot of public feedback. We would form a committee that reviewed the applicants initially, narrow that down to, I think, a few to interview. They would interview those candidates, then narrow it down to 2 candidates, which are then further interviewed by first responders in general in the town, as well as all the police staff. And then those final 2 candidates would go to a public forum and then be interviewed basically by the entire town. I think it worked really well for public feedback. The one piece of feedback I started to get from candidates in this last go around was they were hesitant to become a public candidate as one of 2. Because what happens if they don't get the job, then they have to go back to their agency with this awkward, well, I was going to leave, but I didn't get the job. So maybe it would be helpful to sort of share what we've done with the firms in the RFP and say, look, we're looking for public feedback similar to this, but maybe like the final stage wouldn't be everybody. It might be like a focus group so that their name isn't made public. I don't know, but then again, I'm biased because I'm coming from like having seen this 3 times, what I like, what I didn't like. But as one way,
Right, well, and
public.
I want to jump in. That's why I wanted to kind of leave it to people who've done this a lot and kind of know what the industry norms are and what's accepted. I don't want to put anything out there saying this is going to happen until we know what's going to happen. I have no idea.
Okay.
I think
And to
we
be fair, our
should be
search
careful
didn't really
about setting expectations that may not happen.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to throw out that Bob Stafford had volunteered. He's done recruiting. He is local. He knows who everybody is. And he had some comments about how we were doing our process before and that we were actually missing going out and recruiting people as opposed to doing this national search and send us your resume. And so I think that if you're gonna go with the idea of a, if you're gonna put it out for a bid, I think that certainly the select board and potentially Bob and others who have experience in policing should have a look at it. That would be my comment. I think he would be excellent myself. I'm not sure. He might be excellent, period. And not spend the $20,000. So I would suggest we maybe reach out to him.
I don't think
Yeah, I
that's a
think
bad idea. I mean, could he come in here and talk to us at our next meeting?
I don't know. I mean, he's, he has lots of experience and has come and advised our select board in the past. I don't know, David, what do you think?
It's worth asking.
The only reason why I'd like somebody local is I really would like a chief from a town like ours, not from California and New York
Yeah.
City. They don't understand the way our towns work.
I like chief that lives here and lives close by.
Yeah.
Like these guys.
Can I suggest as a next step then, at our next meeting, we kind of just review what I've put together for the RFP?
Yeah.
All right. So that's gonna be a work in progress.
Yes, and I think that's, from my perspective, kind of what the committee's priority, like immediate priority should be, is getting that out in the process, going.
One of the things that was brought up, and I think maybe both of the previous select board meetings, was that we would talk openly in the search for a chief about where we're at with the two departments and make that one of the requirements of the job is to help both towns sort of work through that process. Is that something that we would want to include in that process? So that we're not answering every single question right now.
Yeah.
But we would look towards leadership to help us with that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So items for next agenda. Oh, sorry.
Respond to what you said, Dennis, about, you were saying, how are we gonna do, or maybe it was Todd was mentioning how we're gonna do policing. Are we gonna have all the police officers in Hinesburg or da? And I would just like to throw to the committee, I think that it would make the most sense to have equal numbers of officers in both towns. And that those officers have a chief, and that chief can make the schedules and go back and forth. And we wind up having both towns wind up having police officers in their towns. So I would just throw that out instead of Hinesburg has this big contract with Richmond for all of their officers. I think that we would want to have our own officers. Myself.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what's easier for the chief to. It's hard.
Yeah, so, when you look at it from a management point of view and inside running two separate departments, it becomes super challenging for the manager because you're running two separate agencies and doubling the workload for that person. And I think in both agencies that the chief is still going to be asked to go to calls for service, answer overnight calls, be on call, etc. And that workload's a lot of work for one person. We can streamline that type of process by, making sure pay and benefits are exactly the same across both towns, making sure the policies are all the same. But at the end of the day, I'm still running two computer systems. I'm still running two offices. You're still running two reports back down to the academy for each training for individuals, where it's just doubling the workload that could be streamlined into one. If it's under one agency head, one agency title, that workload can be streamlined into one workflow. Including like very simple things like, Frank and I went to a call today. We punched two separate cases because both agencies responded to a call together. If it's one agency, that call all falls into one case, and that only generates one workload for one person instead of now we both have workload from that one case to do write-ups. So you know, when you look at really streamlining a process and making it efficient, one agency makes a lot of sense. Having one manager over two agencies is going to be challenging for whoever takes that role.
I think just.
So this is Bart. I have a comment on that. I think, of course, it's true. But the reality is right now, we actually politically have 2 towns and 2 police departments. Our budget for next year, starting July 1st, has a half-time police chief and positions, not a contract. We have a collective bargaining agreement in Richmond. I actually think that a single agency, we talked about what that could look like in a couple of different ways. I just don't think it's politically possible in the next, call it 15 months, to contemplate that. I think my view is if we're going to eliminate a police department in Richmond and contract with Hinesburg for everything, I strongly think the Richmond voters will need to weigh in on that.
Hey, Bart, I just want to follow up on that point. I kind of see this as there's a few different options long term. Short term, I think we got to kind of stay with what we have. But long term, I think the simplest to administer is one town providing the service to another, through a contract. Recently, I think just kind of last week, I thought about a hybrid model where both towns are contributing resources that tie them together, but make them feel like they all have kind of an equal say, or at least footing, beyond just a simple contract for service. And that could look like, frankly, and this is just, kind of hypothetical, all of the employees being Richmond employees, but their main base. So Richmond's providing the employees. It's the Richmond-Hinesburg Police Department, but their main base of operation is the Hinesburg PD. So Hinesburg is providing the building. Obviously, there'd be a satellite office out of Richmond. So I think there are some creative ways we can come at this, and I want to, as I've kind of said from the beginning, I don't think that there's Hinesburg doesn't necessarily have a goal of trying to gobble up the Richmond PD and just contract for service. So that's just some of the things I'm thinking. And we could also just go our separate ways. Each hire a chief, each hire employees, and just coordinate scheduling.
And all those options are clearly on the table. When we were talking earlier with short-term and long-term goals, I think our short-term goals, if I put a timeline on it, would be before next budget season, we have a direction forward for the next budget. So that would be a short-term goal. Like, we've come up with a model that we want to move forward with by that point, whatever that model is. So that way we can all work together when it comes to making the next year's budget, knowing what we're looking at.
Do you think that'll affect our hiring process now, though? You just have to be upfront now that
I think
you possibly might be going to one town or another. We don't.
I think that it does make open conversations are definitely important, especially when it comes to that hiring process with new employees, to say, hey, this is where we stand. And the faster we have an answer for that, the faster we will probably get more employees to come our way. But that's not to say we should rush this process.
Right. Okay. Anybody else have anything else we think we should think about before the next meeting?
I just want to follow up on what Matt said. I think that's a good point, and getting it ready by the budget season, I think, would be a good goal, but just a reminder that is really like October. So we've got like 5 months, which can be light speed in government. So just to remind people that that's how fast we're talking, which I think it's a good goal. I think if we work towards it, we could do it, but It's gonna take some work.
I'm not saying that it's the best.
I'm not saying it, I'm just putting reality out there. I'm not
Yeah,
saying,
no.
I'm not saying we can't do it. I just want to like remind people that that is quick.
Especially if we're, you know, the concept of bringing a chief on to help us think through some of the logistics of this. Yeah, it's certainly gonna be a tight timeline. But it does make the most sense.
Well, do you think in the beginning, we need to meet every week?
I don't know. I mean, we could start with the every other and see where we go, maybe. I mean, I've seen other committees I've been on where we're meeting twice a month and then we pick it up as, you know, as needed. But I'm one member of 7 here, or 6.
Okay.
I think we can do work in between. I mean, I'm hearing Todd say he's very close to doing this RFP. It would be great if you got it to your committee so you could review it
Right.
and look at it for your next meeting, so you're not wasting the meeting, you know, reading through that, you know, like there can be work that happens in between.
And Todd and Josh, can you? What was the guy's name? Bob?
Bob Stafford.
Is that, could you guys reach out to him too?
Sure.
Yeah, there are others in the state too. So, you know, I think the committee's immediate focus for the next month or so should be chief selection process. Just keep our eyes on that. So it may make sense to meet every 2 weeks so we don't slow that process down. And then kind of once that RFP is out and we're awaiting, you know, responses, we can go back to looking at sort of more the long-term issues.
So who's gonna contact Bob to see if we maybe don't need to do an RFP? Whose job is that gonna?
No, we would need to do an RFP.
I don't know, Bob.
I mean, I think still an RFP to see what other firms might be out there. I mean, I like Bob and I think he'd be helpful, but I think we need to take a look at a few different options. And I think it might be helpful to have Bob take a look at the RFP, see what he thinks, provide some feedback.
Yeah.
But I think looking at a few different options as far as recruitment firms that might do this, I think would be helpful to look at. Even if, I mean, at the end, we could look at that and say, you know what, Bob's got the best plan, he'll do it pro bono. We go that way. I don't know, but I think looking at some options could be helpful.
But a good step would be reaching out to Bob first, asking if he's even interested. Then I know Bob, so if the answer is yes, he will then immediately give us thoughts.
He certainly will. He's not shy.
And so Bob's a retired former law enforcement guy. He's worked with the police academy and law enforcement with various agencies throughout his career. And
Okay.
he's given us guidance and input in the past on our chief selections.
Okay, thank you.
Are you gonna contact him? Josh, gonna-
I'm gonna contact him. How about I let him know what we're doing at the next meeting, we'll be reviewing the RFP and he could provide feedback like anybody else could provide feedback. From knowing that he'll have perhaps more feedback than the average citizen because of his background.
All right, is there anything else?
I move we adjourn.
All right, move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, hi.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone, take care.
Thanks for coming, Patty.